Yeah, USB would work. Dropbox. Or Dropbox. Give me Dropbox pointer. And then put it up there. Great.
Don't have the comments yet. Students doing that themselves, or should I do it?
Yeah, I think you should do it. Why don't you just upload them, and then if you give us links,
Could a teaching moment for them?
Could be.
While I upload the comments.
Let's see what. Yeah. I could show a content contribution. Let's see where it takes us. But if you could be at the ready, I might call you to show up there. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh.
For which one? Oh, do the admin. It's exclamation archives with an exclamation at archives with no A. The at is the A. Yeah, the editathon is open to the public. So, sorry. Yeah, please. And there is a Google, if anybody would like to, I have a Google Hangout going on right now. Sure. If there's a press, yeah. Sure. Okay, so hi everybody online. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I'm sorry for the confusion. If there are any problems, please let me know. I'm Dina Herbert. I'm the coordinator of the, of the Innovation Hub. We're going to get started. So hi everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Welcome. I'm Dina Herbert. I'm the coordinator of the Innovation Hub. If this is your first editathon, please feel free to come use this side over here. We want to make sure that everybody can see the screen. Andrew Lee in just a few minutes is going to be doing our how to edit Wikipedia. So especially if you're new, we have a bunch of different spaces, but come on wherever you can see. And we're really excited to get started. So for those people online, welcome to the Hangout on Air. And we're gonna get started. Pam, do you wanna,
Sure. Hello, everybody. Good morning. And welcome to the Innovation Hub for the National Conference. We're honored to have you as our guest. And we're excited to be with you today. And, very fortunate to have the Archivist of the United States, David Ferriel, with us, and he has something.
Welcome. Welcome back. So every year now during Public Service Recognition Week, we host an annual event here called the Archivist Achievement Award, and where I get an opportunity to recognize our staff from all over the country on specific accomplishments of the past year. And for the past 3, 4 years, 5 years maybe, we have had a new category called the Citizen Archivist Award, where I have an opportunity to recognize someone outside of my purview who has made extraordinary accomplishments in the world of what I have described as citizen archivists. Those who have helped us connect with users in a new, exciting way. And actually, Common was the first recipient of the Archivist, the Citizen Archivist Achievement. So he set the standard, he set the bar kind of high, but this year I was able to honor Andrew as this year's recipient of the Citizen Archivist Achievement Award. But what I didn't have at the time was the award itself.
hang on, I'm gonna, Andrew, would you mind turning this off? So, yeah,
Thank you.
It's on the back. I'm sorry, I can't reach it.
You know what
This
I'll
way,
do?
it's a little perfect. It's a little meta.
Hack the system.
Thank you.
So this is the official award, which reads National Archives and Records Administration, National Archives, the Archivist Award for Outstanding Citizen Archivist presented to Professor Andrew Lee for outstanding commitment to building a vibrant, participatory culture that connects and spreads knowledge across the National Archives, academia, and the Wikimedia community.
Thanks so much. I'd like to thank David and Pam for supporting all of our great Wikimedia efforts here in DC, but nationally as well. They've hosted the Wiki Conference USA here, hosted, I don't know, it must be at least a dozen meetups here in NARA at this point. So we're just so happy to have a great clubhouse for Wikimedia activities in DC. And we're in the process of trying to spread that to the rest of the country. So appreciate your efforts of helping us to do that.
I'm a huge fan, you know that.
Thanks
Good.
again. All right.
See you.
I'll pass it around. All of our awards.
Pam, would you like to say anything? Okay. So I'm gonna turn this over to Andrew. So for those viewing online, I'm going to screen share and get the slides going.
I had orange mic in mind when I made these slides, so just for you.
Do we want to also take a minute to go around the room and introduce ourselves?
Yes, that sounds like a
And
great idea.
our levels of.
Okay, great. So what we'll do is just very quickly go around the room, and if you could just introduce yourself, what you do that might be Wikipedia related. You don't have to have any experience in Wikipedia, but just say who you are, what your interest is in, whether it's subject matter or Wikipedia, and just a simple sentence about what you do. So my name is Andrew Lee. I'm a professor of journalism here at American University in DC. I've written a book about Wikipedia. I've been part of the community for over 10 years, and I run a class that comes down to NARA and does Wikipedia thing with curators and smart folks who work in the cultural heritage sector. So really happy to do this training today. Why don't we start over here? Sorry, got you mid-drink there.
That's fine. I'm Callie Doyle. I'm the Wikipedian in residence for gender equity at West Virginia University.
I'm Dina Herbert again. I'm the coordinator of the Innovation Hub here at the National Archives. And I'm really excited that we have so many folks here ready to edit articles based on our records here.
I'm Mike Lowry. I'm a Wikipedia administrator. I'm from Milwaukee, here for our GLAM camp, allied of the LGBT community in Milwaukee.
I'm Mark Mendez. I'm a university librarian in Florida, and I've been admin for quite so long on Wikipedia.
I'm Sherry Antoine, and I'm from Wikimedia in New York City, and I'm project manager at Wikipedia.
I'm Paul Wilson. I'm a one-time Wikipedia editor, new to Wiki, and I want to send a shout out to all my friends in the audience, the LGBTQ community. Welcome aboard.
I'm Elaine Rosa with the Indian Historical Society, and I'm the GLAM Wiki project manager for the Indian Historical Society. And the Historical Society is the LGBT collection in the city of Minneapolis.
Great.
My name is Jenny Lamb. I live in Tulsa, and I'm a Wikipedia administrator.
I'm Rosie Stevenson from Las Vegas, Nevada, Wikipedia administrator and founder of WikiNews Women in Red.
I'm Mel Hannes. Recently became the organizer for Wiki San Diego, October 7th through 10th. You're all invited. I'm Mary Mark Ackerbloom. I'm the Wikipedian in residence at the Chemical Heritage Foundation in Philadelphia, which is a history of science organization. And if any of you are in Philly at some point, the Bloomington Way Center has a really wonderful LGBT archive, which I recommend visiting.
I'm Dominic Bird McDevitt. I am the Wikipedian in residence here at National Archives.
I'm Jason Long, and I'm the lead coordinator for the Military History Project.
I'm Bruce Engelhardt. I'm the Wikipedia in Seattle. Milwaukee.
Why don't we go back there? MC McBride?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Brown. I work at A2 and have a background in arts and archives. And this is my second.
Great. Archives 2 is out in College Park. Thanks.
I'm Alex Benson, user stat ads, and I write about novels on Wikipedia all the time.
Hi, I'm Kevin Karabi. I'm a Wikipedian. I go by Super Hamster, and I'm an undergraduate from Ohio State University.
I'm Troy Washington. I'm the president.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I work in National Archives. I'm Julie Chen. I work at the National Archives, and I'm in the Office of Presidential Library. I work on social media.
Hi, I'm Dana Allen Real. I'm the Web and Social Media Branch Chief here at the National Archives, and I'm very interested and have been for a long time in how museums can make sure that our diverse history is represented.
Great.
I just want to say, I'm Pam Wright. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer from the National Archives, and it's exciting to hear where the base from and what he's doing. I'm so welcoming folks from the National Archives to these meetings. And my goal is to get more of us in here. I think we're a platform to make lunch. And there's a lot of business about being in these meetings. But we are so similar. Our groups are very similar, and we have a lot that we can share together. So we're going to try to get more and more of this on board as we continue to have this.
Great. Thanks so much. Yes.
I'm Jim Gaze. I'm a member of the UC.
Great. I'm definitely invite any of the folks from NAR, if you want to come up to the table here, it might be easier to watch up here. There's a blank space there, over here. So definitely be hard to crane your neck to see an angle there. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that while I introduce the posters over there. So the posters there are pretty new. They're kind of a experiment that we have in trying to increase the uptake of Wikipedia content for these editathons. So for people new to Wikipedia, feel free to look at those and learn more about Wikipedia. But a lot of that content we'll be presenting today up on the screen here. So if you want to move your way around and get over here, that'd be great. And for our GLAM folks who are here for the 3 days, I put a little note at the bottom of our notepad. Anything that you see in my presentation that we can improve on, add to, or you want to, suggest additions, please feel free to add notes at the bottom. This is by no means a complete or perfect presentation. Everyone's got different things to add to these editathons.
And I will say, if you haven't gotten coffee or bagels, please feel free. And one more quick announcement. Sure. I apologize. The restrooms, for those who may not have been to the Innovation Hub, you're going to go straight through the research rooms. You'll see where it says registration, and the restrooms are on the left. So should you need that. And if anybody has any other questions about the space, again, if you are not an archive staff member, please do sign a waiver for the photographs that we're taking today. They're on the table. This is, thank you again. So thank you, Andrew.
Great. All right, so welcome everyone here to an introduction to editing of Wikipedia. Probably the most important things we'll talk about today are some of the policies that are the bedrock of Wikipedia editing. And even if you don't edit that much more beyond today, just knowing some of the things that make Wikipedia work and the literacy around Wikipedia is really useful going forward. Right? So let's first take a look at some of the Wikipedia basics. You've probably seen that logo before where it says Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Unfortunately, in the English language, that's a loaded word, right? Do we mean free as in beer or free as in freedom? Well, we mean both. So if you are well-versed in Latin, sometimes we call it gratis, meaning it's zero cost to you to read it, but it's also libre, meaning it's free to copy, edit, propagate, reuse in any way you want. So it's free in both senses of the word. It is created and edited by volunteers. Although there is a Wikimedia Foundation in San Francisco with about a staff of 200 to 300 folks, by and large, they don't edit Wikipedia. It is the thousands and thousands of editors that volunteer around the world. And in fact, there's a good reason why the staff of the Wikimedia Foundation don't edit Wikipedia for legal reasons. So it's overseen by the nonprofit Wikimedia Foundation. All edits and versions are recorded forever. So this is interesting. If you modify a page from Wikipedia, don't feel like you might accidentally delete something. It can always be retrieved. So a lot of the things that we tell people when they want to engage with Wikipedia is to be bold. Just jump right in. You won't break anything really by trying things out. You might get a little bad, angry message once in a while, but in general, just try it out. Don't be afraid of breaking anything. So basic stats, there's about 5+ million articles in the English language, over 270 different languages, depending on whether you count encyclopedia with 200 articles as a encyclopedia or 2,000, right? But 200 languages is pretty impressive nonetheless. These are numbers that even a lot of experienced Wikipedia editors don't know that much about. So it's really hard to measure how many users are in Wikipedia editing, but we have basically two measures: how many people are active and how many people are very active, right? So roughly 75,000 people edit about 5 times a month in Wikipedia. That's pretty significant, right? And then about 11,000 editors across all languages edit at least 100 times a month. Okay, so that's just around the size of Facebook in terms of employees, I think it is. So it's pretty impressive that a volunteer crew does that much work per month. So we go to the next slide. So the word free. All content is freely, it must be freely licensed without restrictions to be in Wikipedia. So whether that's something you write, when you save the file, you agree to release all the stuff that you write under a free license. And in general, we're talking about these two different types of licenses, right? Creative Commons, Attribution Share Alike, although there's different versions of that as well, or public domain. Like these are the two basic things that we talk about as licenses. It's either the written content or the image, multimedia content that you upload to Wikipedia. And you may not have heard of this before, but all the images and the imagery that you load up into Wikipedia pages when you view them are actually coming from a repository called Wikimedia Commons. And that's its own distinct community where you upload pictures, and they have competitions and photo contests and drives. It's its whole own active community that's there. So something that's really important to notice here is that commercial reuse of what's in Wikipedia is absolutely allowed, encouraged. Great. We are completely fine with it. So if someone donates content under a non-commercial license, we can't use it in Wikipedia. We want to guarantee anyone who downloads content from Wikipedia can do anything they want with it, even make money, gobs of money off of it, like Google does. So if you ever do a Google search for a name, you'll see something like that show up on the Google results page. It probably came from Wikipedia. That's perfectly fine with us. That's
But the way Google displays it may not properly reflect your Wikipedia content.
That's true. They may not give 100% credit all the time, right? So next slide. So WikiProjects are clusters of articles that are related to a topic. You might have actually people active in specific areas like military history or food or dance. But one of the ones that's most important for us today is the one around galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, which we call GLAM. And it's not just limited to those organizations. We're talking about aquariums, symphony orchestras, conservatories, book festivals. So anything that's mission-aligned with Wikipedia for knowledge in the public interest is pretty much under the GLAM umbrella here. And you can see kind of the history of how this developed over the years. It started with a Wikipedian in residence, a Wikipedia editor that worked with the British Museum in 2010. And over the years, it has gone to places like the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, Dominic here, the National Archive, and also Smithsonian. And this has just snowballed over the years, which is why we have a gathering here to move this further down the line in the United States. Let's go to the next slide here. So we have this thing called the GLAM Wiki US Consortium that tries to work with multiple cultural institutions in the US to increase Wikipedia literacy and also to work directly with these organizations to increase Wikipedia quality. Next slide. Okay, so let's take a look at an article, because you probably have never really plumbed down into the details of an article, even though you probably use Wikipedia a lot. So let's take a look at the next slide here. And we'll see that these are the main policies, and there's lots of policies in Wikipedia, but these are kind of the bedrock policies of Wikipedia that you should remember. And probably you'll understand a lot more about why Wikipedia is the way it is through these policies. The one that almost everyone puts up there as the non-negotiable part of Wikipedia is the neutral point of view. It's kind of the objectivity ideal of Wikipedia, right? It's this idea that you should be writing articles so that all sides can agree on the topic, right? So whether you're writing about Israel or Palestine, or about abortion, or about gun laws, you're trying to fairly represent all sides so all sides can agree on something. Hopefully this works with lots of editors and lots of discussion, pushing and pulling of editing. And most of the time it works. When it doesn't work, it can be really disastrous. But on balance, in the 5 million articles of Wikipedia, most of what you see has benefited from these policies, that NPOV, or neutral point of view. Notability is another big one. Why are there not 20 million articles in Wikipedia? Because we have a threshold for what is notable enough to be in Wikipedia, right? So we talk about there are enough significant independent sources that indicate the importance of someone. So there are a lot of battles over whether this YouTube celebrity should be in Wikipedia, or whether this sports star should be in Wikipedia. And different language editions of Wikipedia have different standards. Verifiability is the biggest one, which is related to the next one, no original research. We don't want original ideas from people. It sounds kind of weird, but we only want pointers to existing scholarship or existing stuff. So point to the New York Times, point to the Journal of Medicine, to point to law journals. We don't want your novel theory on how time is a 5-dimensional thing that wraps on itself. You can point to Stephen Hawking's writings about stuff, but don't come with your novel ideas to Wikipedia. And if you think about it, it just makes complete sense. Otherwise, Wikipedia just spins out of control, right? You really need to have references online, hopefully, but also in print that you can point to that back up what you're adding to Wikipedia, hopefully balanced in the neutral point of view fashion there. Another thing just about user behavior, one of the big bedrocks of Wikipedia is this idea of assuming good faith. Assume that anyone else you run into Wikipedia is trying to do a decent job, is not trying to sabotage Wikipedia, right? And hopefully that'll keep a positive community spirit within Wikipedia. It's not always true, but it's a good working starting point for working within Wikipedia. And then the last one, which is really important to folks who are working in museums or GLAM institutions, is conflicts of interest, right? And our best practices, maybe Dominic can talk a little bit about this in a second, is to disclose fully who you are when you're working or editing Wikipedia as part of your day job or as part of your paying job. Number one is disclosure, and two is to make sure that you're not running afoul of a new, relatively new, terms of service of Wikipedia where you have to disclose this or you can get banned from the site. So let's go over a few more of these things. I'll go to the next slide. So this is the kind of the specific wording of NPOV. Wikipedia articles should represent diverse views fairly, proportionately, and in non-judgmental language. And a lot of times we'll refer to these shortcuts. You can just type that into a Wikipedia search box, and that'll bring you to the policy pages. So WP:, NPOV. We're very acronym happy in our Wikipedia community. If we look at the next slide here, you'll see COI. Can I edit the Wikipedia article about my workplace, my boss, my grandma? Possibly, but I think this is one of the best phrases you'll find in Wikipedia to summarize whether something you're doing is kosher or not. When advancing outside interest is more important to an editor than advancing the aims of Wikipedia, that editor stands in a conflict of interest, right? So most editors coming to Wikipedia that don't have an affiliation or anything will edit Wikipedia in good faith in the public interest. But if you're editing as a NAR employee or a Smithsonian employee and you're editing about something your institution does, then suddenly you have to think about whether you are abiding by Wikipedia's guidelines or whether you venture into the PR side of things and start pushing an agenda or pushing publicity about something beyond those borders. Right? And then on that last one that we have after this, let me see if I should get Dominic to talk about this real quick now or the next one. Let's see. Yeah, Dominic, why don't you talk a little bit then about the nuance of NAR employees signing up at COI?
Yeah, and are you going to walk them through like creating an account?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Because we'll, for NAR staff, your user page and give you your standard disclosure affiliation with the National Archives. So we've actually developed a template that includes all of that language for you. So we'll show you when you're learning how to edit. We'll show you how to add a template, and then you'll just have to fill in the fields for name and title and those sorts of things.
Great. Yeah, so we'll have a template, and I think other GLAM institutions have done the same thing, templatizing some kind of disclosure for their employees. Right. So I want to go to the next one about wikis. All right. If anyone's ever been to Hawaii, you probably have seen that the shuttle bus between terminals at the airport used to be, I think they brought it back, used to be called the Wiki bus. And in the Polynesian language, wiki means quick. So double wiki means really quick. And that was the idea behind the wiki software that was used for Wikipedia back in 2001. It was the idea that, what if we could allow anyone to just go to a web page and hit a button and edit that page directly? So anyone from that era kind of knows before you had to download the HTML file, open up the text file, save it, FTP it back to the server, really cumbersome. So the wiki software was meant for you to hit a button, edit, save directly in that web page. And that was really kind of Tim Berners-Lee's original vision of the World Wide Web, and the wiki software realized that. So it was meant to be a quick way to edit anything on a page. And the great thing about it remembers all versions of this, and we'll show you an example of what this looks like in a second. So again, you don't have to worry about destroying anything. Someone can come around later and go, well, no, I didn't want you to delete that. I'm going to bring it back. Or you can keep adding and subtracting stuff from articles without fear of deleting anything permanently. And then the real key here is that you could hyperlink between pages. You didn't have to actually create a page explicitly. You could just kind of name a page you wanted, click on a red link, which indicates something that's missing in Wikipedia, and then boom, it creates the page and you can start editing again. So that was kind of the magic of the wiki. So you go to the next page, we'll show you kind of a breakdown of what a Wikipedia page looks like. This is not unfamiliar to you in terms of what a Wikipedia page looks like, but some of these things you may not have always used. So the first thing is the discussion button at the top. If you've never looked at a talk page before, it's really fascinating. It is kind of the newsroom, quote unquote, of an article where people discuss, should we change this? Should we rename the article this? Here's a reference I found, whether it's reliable or not. So it's a really interesting chatter behind the scenes that you can get insight into how an article was created. It will also have interesting things like whether there have been past conflicts around issues for that article, and there might be remedies or warnings saying, yes, we debated that thing for 2 years, we finally came to a resolution, please don't re-debate that thing again. Or there might be, here are the best references we found for this event. If you're going to edit Wikipedia, please be aware of these things. So it's kind of like a shared notepad behind the scenes of any article on Wikipedia. Really interesting to look at if you've never seen it before. You find the lead paragraph there. We try to do sometimes we call it in journalism, the inverted pyramid. Try to tell the big picture story in that first paragraph, and that's the goal of pretty much every Wikipedia article. The edit button in the upper right-hand corner, if you've never hit before, that's what gets you into what we'll be doing today, seeing a real visual editor to edit pages there. You can actually look at the full history of a page by clicking on the View History button in the upper right-hand corner. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then that box on the right-hand side, which kind of looks like the Google search engine results page box, is what we call the info box. So it normally has a headshot if it's a biography, and there's critical information below. Something we really didn't talk about in the beginning is if you're editing articles about living persons, something we call biographies of living persons in Wikipedia, there's an extra high threshold for verifiability, right, or referencing, because we don't want to ruin the reputation of someone living with someone adding inadvertent information. So over the years, we developed a very rigorous biography of living persons policy in Wikipedia called BLP. And then this is something that's kind of new. Even for veteran Wikipedians, here, there's actually a button that says Wikidata item. So if we have time, we can even talk a little bit about Wikidata, which is a way of structuring all this stuff in Wikipedia that is just lexical information. Right now there's 1999, 2007, 2008, you want to know there. But that's just typed in stuff. But if you put that into a structured database, you can actually make a query saying, show me all winners of the Man Booker Prize who were born in London between 1961 and 1963. Boom, you get all the answers if it's in Wikidata. So that's kind of cool. Just if you have some time, just click on Wikidata item. You'll see that it's structured data that you're probably used to seeing as archivists and GLAM professionals. Okay, so that's just kind of an overview of a Wikipedia page. You go to the next slide. You will see what happens when you click on that View History button. So you'll get this, which looks really intimidating for newbies, but it's not really that bad. What it does, it shows you every single version of the article. This is just a slice of it. The newest ones at the top and the older ones at the down below. Here you can see that if someone has registered a username and have logged in, this is the username that you'll see. Flyer22 Reborn, or I have no idea how to pronounce that. It must be the Rocky or something. I don't know. Anyways, we've got usernames there, and if you didn't register a username, you'll see this. This is the internet address of the visitor. So what's weird about Wikipedia is that that's an anonymous editor, but they're revealing a lot about themselves with that internet address. So that's, we still call those anonymous editors or IP editors, but they're not really anonymous. You can kind of tell where they are with that internet address. Well, what this shows you is what the size of the article was after their edit, and then whether they added bytes or deleted bytes, right? So plus 14 or minus 16. And then if you're a good Wikipedian, we'll put an edit summary at the end. But after you make a change, you'll hit the save button, but you'll put a little summary saying what you did. So you can see that someone there said undid vandalism, or they'll say praised him, which I guess is a good thing. Or his name in Arabic is provocative and not consistent with the style. So you might see people volunteering more context around their edits there. And that's really, really useful for telling people what you did. Okay, so again, date, editor name, bytes changed, whether they're added or subtracted, and then the edit summary out there. And you can just look at article edit summaries all day if you want. I think the longest edit summary, I'm sorry, the edit history is George W. Bush at 47,000 revisions, I think something around there. Yeah. It's way up there. And then the next one, next largest one, I think, is list of WWE personnel. So George W. Bush and WWE, the most edited articles in Wikipedia. All right, next slide would be good. And then this is the bottom of an article, right? So this is where a lot of useful stuff comes from, and this is where a lot of high schoolers and college students love this stuff because it points them to references, external links. It's the directory of where you should go next. And this is my advice always to students is there's no better starting point than Wikipedia for your research. There's no worse ending point for research than Wikipedia. And this is what saves them. Is you go to the references section, you go to the external links. So you can see external links are right there for Salman Rushdie. These are what are called nav boxes. You may not have known, but these have lots of interesting things in here. But you have to click on the show button there to expand. Right? So these are all the recipients of the Booker Prize, all the works by Salman Rushdie, but they're collapsed because not everyone wants to see all that stuff. But you can open them up, and these are called nav boxes, navigation boxes. And then we have categories down here, right? So you can add things like, you know, he was born in 1947. These are British novels from the 20th century. And these can, this is actually much longer than this thing down there. But this is a nice way of navigating different categories by clicking on those things down there. Authority control, you can see all the different linkages to other databases here. So a lot of cool stuff at the bottom of these articles there. And then upper right-hand corner there, sometimes people miss that, related media. You got to click on that and go to Wikimedia Commons and see all the pictures and audio related to Salman Rushdie in the multimedia repository. Right, so it's kind of a nice tour of the extras at the bottom. Let's go to the next slide. And then this is what we call a diff. So one of the, remember that crazy name I told you about before? So if you actually clicked on the little word that says diff, or prev, P-R-E-V, means previous, that says, let me see the difference between the older version, or the previous version, and the current version, and then it'll bring up this. And this is what we call a diff. And there's software that can show you the visual differences between any two revisions. You can see that this anonymous editor here did something really bad and put this little, you know, incorrect information there. And then hopefully, very quickly, ooh, no, it survived several hours, 6 hours. This person came by and said undid vandalism and got rid of that word there. But for 6 hours, you had doggy in front of Salman Rushdie's name, right? So that stuff, we need to train our anti-vandal bot a little bit better. So that's what you can do for looking at revision changes between any two saved versions of an article. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so the basics of Wiki Markup. How do you start editing Wikipedia? Let's take a look at the next slide. All right, so we are very lucky now that for over a decade, you had to learn a very complex, not very complex, but fairly complex Wiki Markup language like this. So if you wanted to make a bold Word, you have to put 3 single quotes here. Italic, you put 2 single quotes there. You need to put double brackets if you want to link to a Wikipedia article, or if you want to link to an external site, you can put it in single brackets. So this is a general wiki markup, and you should still learn a little bit of this. But we're really lucky now that the visual editor is the default editor for all new editors of Wikipedia. So it's just like editing the Microsoft Word document or a WordPress blog entry or anything else that you're used to as a what you see is what you get editor. Okay, but if you've got a page in Wikipedia, you kind of still need to know a little bit of this wiki markup. Basically, if you type in something like this, it'll generate something like this. So anyone who used any kind of HTML or any kind of simple markup language will find that wiki markup is not that hard as long as you have kind of a cheat sheet next to you with all that information. And we actually have one. If you just type in WP cheat, you'll get a whole listing of the things that you can do. And I'll show you some examples in a second. But in general, the visual editor, which will show you when we create accounts, is pretty simple to use and has great features that you can tap into. Let's go to the next slide. So here's an example of the cheat sheet. If you go and type in that WP cheat, it shows you how to do italic, bold, and then you saw the different headings that you have in an article, and you can basically just create different headings by putting different numbers of equal signs next to the heading text there. You can link to Wikipedia articles with this double bracket. That's probably the most important thing to learn about Wikipedia. That's how you link to other articles, a double bracket on each side there. Okay, and then linking to outside sites is using the full URL, a space, and then a word that you can click on for your markup. Go to the next slide. And this will be much easier when we actually start editing. I'm just giving you an overview here. Bulleted lists, numbered lists, so a lot of the same things you find in any kind of word processing system. And then you can actually embed images and control whether they show up on the left side or the right side or how big they appear in the page. Probably not something you'll get to in this editathon, but it's pretty simple. You just basically use a syntax of putting in the file name, and then whether it is a thumbnail or not, that's the thumb, and then some captions. You'll get something like that on the right-hand side. Okay. And this is the weird one if you're on discussion pages. If you are talking to someone on discussion page, whether it's your own discussion page or one for an article, this is the only thing that is probably out of order there. If you want to sign your name when you are done typing in a message, you put in 4 tildes, probably a symbol you rarely ever touched on your keyboard. 4 in a row will sign your name and the date afterwards. And that's just kind of a custom we have in the community of signing your comments so people know who they're talking to. All right, next slide. All right, so account creation. So how many people here do not have a Wikipedia account and need to create one? You have one already from the last editathon. How many people need to create an account? Okay, great. Anyone else need to create an account, or are you reusing an older account? Okay, wow, so we don't have to create accounts, maybe just modify the user pages? Yeah, I can mostly do that. Okay, good. Let's go to the next slide. Let me see if there's anything here. We don't need to do any of this, except everyone should know this already. No institutional or shared accounts. Right, so everything's individual. You kind of know the reasons why we talked about before. SQL's membership in the community and facilitates discussion. Let's go to the next slide. But I don't know, this is all different depending on what editathon you go to, but these are kind of the recommended tools I recommend folks to turn on. The vanilla account you get when you log in, gets you basic features, but there are a lot of bells and whistles you can add that make your Wikipedia experience much more meaningful. So to me, I wish these were defaults, and Alex, I think, is working on making these defaults. But so these are some things I recommend, and maybe for the benefit of folks listening from afar. If you create an account, you can go to the Preferences menu in your user account, and then there's a little tab that says Gadgets. And these are all like little enhancements or add-ons to your Wikipedia account that can give you little extra features. And I think these are kind of the magic of having an account on Wikipedia, because you kind of get access to the secret menu of Wikipedia, right? If you've ever been to In-N-Out Burger, you get the secret menu at In-N-Out Burger. This is the secret menu of Wikipedia. There's one that's called hover cards. This is when you put your mouse on top of a wiki link. It gives you a miniature version of the Wikipedia article. You don't have to click on it. which is kind of nice. It doesn't really help you on mobile because there's no such thing as mousing over on a mobile, but if you're on a desktop and you put your mouse on top of the word Salman Rushdie, you get his headshot and a mini bio pop up right there. You don't have to click, which is really nice. Hotcat, there's a option to go and add this function. So at the bottom of every Wikipedia article, there's a little box, and you can start typing the name of a category, like 21st century authors, and then it'll fill in all the different categories that Wikipedia knows about, so you can add categories very quickly to articles. More menu is probably the one thing I would say, if there's only one thing you take away from this, enable the more menu option. This gives you cool things that GLAM people love, like metrics. Like you can just go to that more menu and say, hey, how many people viewed this article in the last month? And you get this nice graph and stats and beautiful things you can play with. I don't know why it's so hidden by default, but if you have the more menu on, it's there all the time when you're looking at articles. And there's a lot of other cool things that you can do the long-term analysis on articles, like who were the most prominent editors over the last 5 years on an article, when was the article edited the most, really cool thing. So more menu has all the really cool, useful metrics for GLAM people. If you are going to be in this community for a while, I don't know how many people in our GLAM folks do this. There's an option that says change UTC-based times and dates to your local time. I hate reading things like UTC minus 05. I can't do that math in my head. But when you turn this option on, it'll always print the time of discussions in your local time zone, which is so much more useful. And then there's another option that says display an assessment of an article's quality at the top of the article, which is really cool as well. It'll tell you whether we as Wikipedians have assessed it as a start, B class, C class, featured article. That's usually nice to know when you're looking at an article, what we kind of think of it. So these are just some useful tools I recommend folks turn on in their user preferences. Next slide. All right, editing. I have the next slide. All right, so normally we tell people to practice in the sandbox. So if you are looking at Wikipedia, there's a little sandbox button at the top after you create an account. Or we also tell people to go to the user page and tell some folks about you. Or tell people about you. And if you're a GLAM employee, a COI disclosure is where you want to go to the user page. The reason why we want people to add the user page right away is because if you don't put anything there, whenever your name shows up, it's a big red link, which is like putting a big newbie sign on your head when you're walking around Wikipedia. So best to put something on your user page so you don't walk around with a neon red username in Wikipedia, right? So you want to talk a little bit about how to set up the COI disclosure for NARA employees?
What's the best way for me to?
Dina's got the one projecting them. Okay.
Yeah. How do you want to?
Is it okay if we just go to live on Wikipedia?
To where?
Is it okay?
Yeah. And then I just want to swap it so that we can get people online and see.
If you got more people, you can maybe just do the account creation on there if you want to walk through it.
Right. That's what I was.
Good.
So if you are a National Archives staff, we've actually created standard language that you can do your intro statement. And the way you're going to do that is, let me log in first, actually, by using a Wikipedia template. So with the visual editor, it won't be as scary as it used to be. And I logged successfully. So I'm gonna hit edit just to show you on my own user page. I'm just gonna clear what's there and start from scratch. So if you're logged in on Wikipedia, if you go to the top and click your username, that's how you get to your user page. And then from there, you can click the edit button, which is the visual editor edit button.
So to delete this. So to add a template for this, you'll go to Inserts, and then you'll see the template button there. And this will pop up a dialog box where you can say what template you want to add. So ours is just called Nara user page. And so as you start typing that, it'll autocomplete. So you can just select the Nara user page template and select add. So once you've done that, and I can open up actually the template page, it gives you the link there. Just to show you, this is kind of the documentation page for a template on Wikipedia, which the main purpose for this is it'll tell you the names of the parameters for you, so that you don't need to know what they are. So here you can see this template. You can tell it your title, name, title, office, email, and add something about you. So I'll show you what that looks like. If I in the add template box, if I start typing in the names of those fields, like name, then it'll allow me to then type my name here. So, and then same for others, like let's say office. I can select that and then say Office of Innovation. And then the About Me field is just going to add another paragraph where you can write whatever you want rather than the template language. So I can say About Me, and then I can say, I like cats. And then just to show you what this will look like, you can take your time filling this all out, but I just wanted to do the insert so you can see how it'll generate the whole template for you. I didn't fill in title, but this paragraph here is all the standard language. I'm a paid employee at the U.S. National Archives, and then this is the whole statement that will be generated for you. If you want to add anything personal about yourself, that'll go here. So this will just to see what it looks like. So once you've done that, then you'll actually have a user page that looks very professional and stiffier than most other new Wikipedia users. And the idea here is whatever you do when you make your first edits, if another Wikipedian sees you, clicks on your user page, they can immediately see who you are. And also, it also points people to me if they.
So if you scroll back down, they have an email address, right?
Yeah.
So I see that, I want to add my email, what do I do?
Yeah, that was. I just didn't fill out all the templates, or sorry, all the fields. But that's the same. If I go back to this, I can say there's an email field. So. Yeah, that'll go there. No, I was being clear. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not my email.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay. So I guess we can bring Andrew back. And also, feel free to actually read the language on the user page, because that'll help kind of orient you to our our organizational philosophy towards it.
You want me to come back in? Yep. Okay. Great. So I'll just show you one little thing that is interesting to probably LAMP type folks. If you go to the next slide. Just as one, pretty much anything that you're adding to Wikipedia will be typing in your own words, or typing in your own words what you found in terms of research. But one of the things that we now have in Wikipedia is a very high standard for anything that you add must have a reference. And we're really lucky now that with the visual editor, which is much more like Microsoft Word, allows you to put this in a semi-automated way. So with this visual editor, you'll notice a button here called Cite. So anytime you type in a statement, a fact, or something that comes from another source, now you can actually hit the Cite button, and it'll actually put in a little footnote-looking thing. Then you can actually type in the information. Now you could go in there and type in author, publication, title, date, all that stuff manually. That's always an option. We're really lucky now Visual Editor has a way, as we were discussing before, interacting with something like Zotero. You paste in the URL, it'll look through the page and pluck out all the information and the metadata and populate it automatically. So here's an example. Look, if we go to the next slide, if you click on the Cite button up there, which you can see with the red explosion thing up there, it'll bring up a box like this and says, hey, put in the URL, DOI, or PMID there. Can you put an ISBN? I'm not sure.
Soon. We're working on it.
Soon. Good, soon. But look at the example, blah, 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 example.com. So what I did was I said, well, I know a reference. It's from the Washington Post. So I just pasted in this URL directly from the WashingtonPost.com site. And then after a second or so, it generates this automatically. Okay. For well-known sources, it'll do the right thing. It'll get the date, the publication, and the title. If there is a byline there, it'll normally strip out the journalist name and give the last name, comma, first name, and do everything right. So this is huge and really much more useful for teaching folks. Before, we had to tell people how to use a template and extract all this stuff manually. But it's really nice that for most common sources, just putting in the URL, the magic will happen here, and it'll just generate this, and you hit insert, and you're done. It'll just insert that reference. And
librarians really love this. It works for JSTOR.
Ah, nice. Right.
If you put the stable URL in there, it'll populate all the fields, volume, all that stuff.
Right. And this is a whole subsystem called Citoid, right? And
Built onto Zotero.
it's constantly growing and encompassing more sources along the way. So hopefully the probability that you paste in a link and the right thing will happen will increase over time as you do this. But if you're using common sources, JSTOR, ISBN numbers, things like this, that'll be pretty obvious. It'll create the right thing. So really great. And you know, even a lot of experienced Wikipedians are only discovering this, you know, in the last year, because a lot of experienced Wikipedians did not like the visual editor. Now is a really good reason to use the visual editor is to jack into the system here. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about this, avoiding COI. Go to the next slide. This is a template, I think, for, if you go to the next one, there's a template there that is similar to the one that Dominic showed, right? So this might be useful for folks who are working with GLAM institutions to have this template that you can give to folks you're collaborating with. Next slide, content edits. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so how do you start? So for this editathon, we might have a list of articles we want you to work on. But if you're just trying to get your feet wet with Wikipedia, how do you find edit? The first thing is, research existing similar articles that are out there. You can link to the new article name that you want by creating a red link, right? So whether it's from your sandbox or from a different article saying, hey, you know what, there's no article about this famous scientist. You're going to mention that scientist in an article about the field that they're in. That link will be red, because if there's no article about, this scientist's name, you click on the red link and it'll give you the option to create an article from scratch. Right? So this is somewhat risky in that any article you create will be scrutinized by other folks in Wikipedia. So make sure you've done your research. You're not just adding 3 words to an article. You're actually putting a sentence, a reference, something to back up the notability of that person who's creating the article. But in general, we don't recommend that brand new editors create new articles right off the bat. You could, but in general, it's better to look at existing articles and to modify those first. There is an alternative. You will see this solicitation in your sandbox when you create an article for visiting articles for creation, to submit your work first to this council of folks to look at your work. We generally don't recommend that. It seems to be the official channel for creating articles. It's not. It's just the one that seems to be the most visible to newbies. So we recommend almost always it's better to have an ally or someone you're familiar with within Wikipedia to shepherd you through that process, right? Or just be really good at referencing. You add one sentence, put 3 references in that establish notability, and hopefully it'll kind of grow from there. but the articles for creation is notorious for having like a long wait list and people being really cranky and rejecting your articles. So that's why we don't recommend that. Any feedback? Any other views on article creation from experienced Wikipedians? Do most people kind of not go to articles for creation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do use articles for creation, and you leave it alone for 6 months, it's gonna vanish.
Right.
There's a rule where they can tag it for deletion after 6 months if it's not been edited in 6 months. And trust me, somebody's gonna do that. Because we have very enthusiastic people love to do that for some reason. So, do it in your own.
Right. Yeah. There's another option of there's a draft space in Wikipedia. So you kind of work on it in your own garage, quote unquote, right? Until it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you kind of cart it out into the public space when it's more finished. So that's another option, is to work on it in your private space and then move it out later. So that's just, you know, some advice on creating articles. Let's go to the next slide. Then what next? Well, we're here to help you for this editathon, but if you want to, there's a really good interactive training called the Wikipedia Adventure that lets you step through all these things at your own pace and lead you through the whole creation of articles and everything that we just talked about here. There are many Wikipedia videos online for the same type of training, but then also the most important thing is the help cheat sheet that gives you that kind of one-page description of everything that's there, and that has links off to other resources out there. But I think the Wikipedia Adventure is a good place to start for a lot of folks. And if you just Google it, you'll find Wikipedia Adventure interactive training. Any questions from folks who are either new or newish to Wikipedia? Yes?
I'm wondering, just as someone who uses Wikipedia as a resource, if there's anything in the future to help them figure out, because 9 times by the time when I go to an article and want to see the references, the links, and no one exists.
Right.
And
What's
how
that? Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, I think what's the latest run from the Internet Archive is like 20% of our links are at risk or something like that.
Less than that. So the Wikipedia Foundation, which I work for in my other part of my life, has a partnership with the Internet Archive right now to archive all links. And so they've been archiving all of our links for about 5 years now, consistently. But we're now have a tool that's bringing those links back. So we'll actually have Internet Archive versions of the material in. And it's only like they ran through and got rid of 300,000 dead links in the last 6 months. So it's working, and it's actually deploying more languages. So it's going to be all 285 languages are going to be archived and supported by Internet Archive and a couple other archives.
500 articles means 300,000 references.
Right.
The pure dead links are gone. There's other 404s. There's other kind of dead link errors that we're still working on, like 5 rows.
And just to build on that question, as a new editor and someone with an archives and library school background and interested in referencing, is there a way to help identify what is likely to be a persistent URL as opposed to something that's going to drop off in 6 months? Or do you just hope for the best? I mean, as using your skills as a librarian to identify sources.
So the preference in our community is persistent identifiers alongside URLs, right? So like the DOIs, PMIDs, JSTOR IDs, and we have about 8 standard ones that are supported by the citations, and then you can also add an identifier field to the citation. And Wikipedians will show you how that works.
And to be on the defensive side, if you're citing something that you think might go bye-bye in a few months or a couple of years, but you know it's important to establish notability or some other reason, you can archive it yourself. And then you'll have both the live URL and your archive URL.
But every time you save, Internet Archive archives that URL. So for every citation now, and within the next like hour, that URL is archived by one of their servers.
Scott, that might be fascinating through things like what the results are. It's helpful having a Java applet to figure out.
But I think IA still very respectfully honors robots.txt, so it may not archive everything, right? Really? it's ignoring robot subtext. I mean, I'm happy if it is. But
We'll fix that then, because they want to do everything.
because I was talking to some Millhist people, and a lot of sites will do a reorg or like redesign, and they shift like 100,000 pages to another URL structure. And then we've gone back to IA to try to find it. But because the new site has a robots.txt that doesn't allow, it's actually wiped from IA. Like the old records are wiped because it says, sorry, robots.txt said we can't serve you this thing. Let's talk. Yes. And also, if you want to personal archive it, there's a, I don't know if anyone here uses website, WebCITE. They don't honor robots.txt. They will archive anything. So that's another option. So when I see a page that is like historic, I will say IA archive it, website archive it, and I'll save a PDF myself as well. Yeah, just because I'm weird that way. Yeah.
Usually, like most of the stuff that we should be using is going to be persistent anyway. Like sources like journals and that thing. And so we just try to put in the other identifiers instead of just never putting just the URL.
Right. Like, yeah, I mean, you're right. For persistent stuff, it's much more stable. But for something like me, I work in journalism. So like Gawker.com may go away in the next few months. Like everything may be gone.
Newspapers and television stations are notorious for clearing stuff off.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And
Work heavily on press reports.
Yeah, but even if the URL goes away, if the other stuff is there, it is retrievable in the long term.
yeah, hopefully. But we should talk about to IA and maybe for just Wikipedia stuff, they can say robots.txt, maybe not. Yeah.
We'll spec it.
Yeah. I'm used to Alex saying that. We'll spec it and solve it. That's good. Any other questions? But great question. I mean, Wikipedia is kind of the vanguard of all these links in many ways, right? That's the first contact the public has with this gigantic sea of links. It's the most important links on the internet are in Wikipedia, right? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So in the archives, as we see stuff that's actually primary documentation, do we have a way to reference that in Wikipedia easily? You know, like somebody's looking, it's in box 64 of RG 52, and it's the series on letters received, and you see something that's excellent that you want to use. Can we do that? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, in terms of the citation, that might be a Alex question also, but I will say from my experience, the easy citation, there may be a template somewhere, but the easy citation tools like in Visual Editor don't support things like box number and things like that.
So whatever however it should be, I think for archivists in particular, this is kind of an important question on how can we do this the easiest way. And I think also the more that we can use the primary sources that we live and love, the more we can do.
Yeah, so there's sort of a tension on Wikipedia because Wikipedia will preference a secondary source because you want the authorities to be the one interpreting the primary sources rather than Wikipedia that you interpretation.
Right.
But then, yes, so a lot of times the primary sources end up in Wikipedia more as like the illustration.
As the object, yeah.
A lot of that comes down to verifiability. If that primary source has been scanned or made available on the net somewhere,
In the catalog.
if that specific item is somehow something that you can link to through the catalog, then you can do that, and somebody else can come and verify that that primary source is in fact what you say and does in fact say what you say. It says. But if it's just sitting in a box and there is no sort of way for somebody to see what's on it, then it's very good.
Just to follow up on that, but if it's in the catalog or if it's kind of vouched for by an institution like National Archives or the New York Public Library or wherever it happens to be, does that give it legitimacy in Wikipedia? Just as a lover of primary sources, and I totally get wanting to verify them.
So there's a big debate both about offline sources and primary sources, to what extent you can use them. And the best trick is to not interpret, just state factual and summative information out of primary sources. And offline sources, you can cite them, but be ready for skeptical people to possibly challenge that, which means you might be getting into a more aggressive part of the community.
Well, we want to digitize everything anyway, so it's all right, you know, we get in the catalog. And then again, archivists too are trained not to be neutral. To, I mean, many of the things that are in this community are the same in the archival community, so just back to man kind of.
So, yeah, the problem is that the primary source is often a partisan source, not a neutral source.
Right.
And what we seek for our references, because we're not trying to do, we abjure original research and scholarship. What we want is secondary source. What have the secondary sources said about this topic? Now, if someone has challenged the fact that Fred Bonatner wrote in a letter to Joe Schmo, you know, the Norman Thomas is an evil communist. Your source that's out of the archive box number so and so can document that yes, in this letter he did say that about Norman Thomas, but that's not a source for anything except what this guy said.
So it's more
so what we want to know is, you know, what do the secondary sources say about his relationship to Norman Thomas or whatever?
So rather than saying biased, I usually like to say it's uncontextualized, right? That primary source in isolation hasn't been in context or reconciled with the larger body of work that's there.
The author of the presumably edited and/or peer-reviewed secondary source has done analysis of these primary documents, and that's the sort of material that we wish to use as our source.
Right.
In the Wikipedia universe, that's another happy place for primary documents. Not source. At the time, we would love you to scan that document, a primary source, and upload it to Wikisource. Our actual HDR software would do half the work, and human editors would be solicited to do the other half of the work. Now, we point to the primary source via an external link from the relevant Wikipedia article. You're not summarizing it, we could summarize it, we're not analyzing it, not doing any original research. And now contributed that primary source to Wikisource, and now we put that.
So Dominic, the ones that we have contributed, are they in Wikisource? Are they in the documents? that we have contributed?
Any document that we have uploaded is available to be transcribed in Wikisource.
Okay.
So that just requires an editor to go through that.
So we can contribute.
Can I hop back or actually dovetail a little bit on the issue of neutrality? And as an archivist, Pam, I'm with you there. We just facts kind of thing. But then there are certain topics upon which, and I'm going to be talking about one in a little bit, there are certain topics that neutrality is problematic.
Yes, hard to attain. Well,
So I'm wondering about that.
yeah, and it's not intuitive because the Wikipedia idea of neutrality is not the exact same as objectivity. It's called neutral point of view because Wikipedia tries to achieve neutrality by saying you must represent all of the points of view in the field. But, which is not to say that you give them all due weight. You give the points of view the weight that the scholarship reflects. So that's something which of course can be problematic in certain areas where scholarship itself may be biased. But that's sort of Wikipedia's, in a way, sort of traditionalist stance as a tertiary source, not wanting to, make novel theories itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, certainly the global warming articles in Wikipedia have been traditionally a very big battleground because of those things, right? So, what proportion do you represent the folks who say there's no global warming? There's no man-made, proven man-made global warming, right? So it's really tough. But what example were you thinking of specifically?
Well, I'm going to be I'm Michael Hussey, and I work here at the archives, by the way. And I'm going to be speaking about LGBTQ records. So it would be hard. It'd be hard for me, particularly as a gay man, to talk about the Lavender Scare and being neutral about it. And yet, at the same time, I'm very well trained not to be. There's that line of not to be like overly partisan or overly like polemical. Right. So I'm just. It seems to me like part of your work as Wikipedians must be kind of that gray area and trying to find that balance.
Another point I was going to say is you might not have thought about it, but you probably come across if you read on Wikipedia that sometimes it's written in a very interesting way where the article itself is not trying to ever like make a judgment. So it'll like in the case of global warming, it'll say scientists claim or a particular scientist, or it'll say this thinker says, and then citation. So even when representing different points of view, you're essentially citing the authority who has that point of view, rather than saying what's true or what's not true.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and this really ties to that, I read a lot on science articles, but what I usually advise people is let the facts tell the story in terms of Wikipedia stuff. And, whether it's global warming, you can say the observed the observed surface temperature of blah, blah, blah has risen, and you can cite that information. That's an observable fact with a reference source.
Right.
If it's something like an event in LGBT history, maybe you don't want to go in there and say the police were, in this event were brutal and harassing people at this event. But what you can say is this many people were arrested and later released. This many people were taken to hospital with injuries. You can use the specifics, which are facts.
Sure. Yeah.
To basically illustrate.
Right.
What
is scholarly different on the life. Some authorities say this, others say that that's what it is because of this.
Sure.
A survey article in the Journal of American History concluded that this other thing.
When I do what I'm writing like that, it's like, who says? That's always the question I said. Who says that factual statement? If it's you, no can do.
Right.
If it's John Doe expertise in the subject, then that's okay. You're citing his work, his research, his document in this, so if it's your, that's why when I read it, if it's who said that, you can point to an authority, a verifiable figure, a citation, good go. If it's your interpretation of what that is,
right.
So if you say, no, I say, that's probably a little more problematic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
She's right, because again, if somebody else stated that this was a case of police brutality, you can quote them. Yes.
Of course.
What they have said is a matter of record.
Okay.
And I had a lovely go around with somebody not long ago who had issues with a history of an article about a historical figure who's involved in a scientific discipline. And we probably went through at least 5 rounds of this person going, but these 2 books about the person are basically fictionalized and they're crap and they're, blah, blah, blah. And I just had, I kept going back to him and saying, look, if you can find me a reviewer that said that in a published source, I can use that. If you can find me any sort of published source that supports that statement, I can I can work that information into the article. That even though you are an expert and you are the archivist at such and such a place, which has all the information and all these 5 other things that mean that you are a credentialed, responsible expert, I can't say that. And finally he gave up and stopped asking me. I don't know if he actually really got why, but he at least stopped asking.
Okay.
Did that guy go then and write an article and get it published?
Yes,
saying
he could.
these 2 books are crap, and
He
then
could.
deny it now?
Absolutely.
That's
In
the
a
solution
solid,
for
reliable
experts.
peer
In
review.
a responsible,
You
yeah.
can't put it on his blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if he gets
Right.
it published in a journal, then it's part of the
Then there you
scholarship.
If it's on his
Yeah.
Facebook page, it's not good, but he gets it in a journal.
Exactly, and I said exactly that, I said, look, if this was something that you had said in a published, accepted publication, I could cite it,
A
but let's,
reputable journal, not.
the personal communication does not exist.
I think that, it's an intimidating concept to non-convenience, this whole neutrality. Because neutrality kind of means a different thing out in the world, like if you have a newspaper article and you have to quote one guy who says global warming exists and quote another guy who says it doesn't, but on Wikipedia you don't have to do that. You represent what the scholarship says, and the scholarship says this exists.
Yes.
So you write this exists. And so I would not be too concerned.
And you
You're
support
the
it.
content experts. So just write what you know from the field and cite what you would cite in a journal article, and you'll be fine.
And if there are tertiary sources that say, well, the majority opinion on it is this, those are good too. To say, well, okay, theoretically, there's a dispute here, but there actually isn't one reputable claim.
Here's an interesting thought exercise for Wikipedians. We're not even a thought exercise, but a real exercise. Because I think NPOV has worked pretty darn well since we started in 2001. But if you look at something like the 1911 Britannica, it's pretty shameful, the kind of stuff you find in there, right?
Yes.
What they wrote about Negroes, or they don't even have homosexuality listed in 1911 Britannica, right? So can we look at anything that we've covered that we could look back on 10, 15 years ago, like, oh, I can't believe we wrote that stuff that had stood that long. I can't think of anything that's really wholly embarrassing that we had with our NPOV policy in place that we can look back before 10 years and say, oh, I can't believe we had that.
It's omissions.
Right.
Yes.
So our omissions are typically the problem, not inclusion. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm sorry?
It might be worth putting up an old article on the second
Well, there are articles where we pile on folks. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
I don't think
mistakes tend to be from when we don't apply the policies properly. And then things happen on the street corners or dumb and accurate,
And like most such topics, we have a notice board on which people can draw attention. I don't think the point of view is actually neutral in this article. And then we spend a lot of time doing the filter of, what's right here, what's wrong here, what do the sources say, are we being?
Yes, there's probably plenty of examples where we went wrong, but I don't think you can attribute it to NPOV, the Chelsea Manning naming controversy. But I don't think that came about because because of the policy, it came about the people of insurance.
Right.
I get and appreciate the policy, and actually we apply it here in, say, our exhibits or our educational workshops. It's just that it's some topics are a little bit more challenging than others, and that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is not the first time this question's been asked.
No.
When I've dealt with one where there's not a general consensus is, and I'm writing about historical topic, I think sometimes I said historians disagree. Here's this thought, here's that thought.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So that's how I've been able, when you think about it. And here are the sources that are in this camp, and here are the
Right.
sources in that camp. If you're trying to realize there is no right, wrong, black, white, they disagree, and this is disagree.
It's not really strongly controversial topics. We have articles about the controversy.
Yeah.
Revisionist historians in the Civil War. That's
a great example.
Yeah.
The North and the South, they disagree. You come from Maine, so
Right.
that's why it's point out there was more than one thing.
And there's more than two sides to the story. It's not.
And Wikipedia is not paper, so we have no limit on how much we can cover these things, which makes it even more fun if the sources are there. Right?
So I think the best solution is just to go ahead and do it if you're running any problems and, ask for advice.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for bringing that question.
Thank you for your answer.
What do you think we should do next?
Break on this guy.
We have a break.
So I guess we'll take a 5-minute 5-ish, 5-10 minute break, and then Michael, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who will talk about LGBTQ records here at the archives.
Great.
And then we'll have lunch, which is here, or being set up, and then we will start editing. So we'll regroup in like 5 minutes.
Great.
Which I can go take the shoot.
Everyone is back out. Makes our job a lot easier.
Hey, sir. I was just reading your emails, plural.
Rude.
But oh, so accurate.
Yes, very accurate.
Force is powerful in you.
I think I sent like 5 emails.
Go ahead.
Whatever the count is. Do you want Maria to introduce you since Jim wasn't able to? Jim's not going to be able to be here until like 4 o'clock. So do you want someone to introduce you, or do you have a 5-minute spiel on the Amending America initiative as a whole?
I can do that.
Then yes. We just want to mention, because I didn't do it when we were going around and introducing ourselves, but like the idea that like this is connected to a larger whole. It's not just the Innovation Hub.
Right.
It's part of the national conversations, the Amending America initiative. Hashtag rights and justice.
And for like a web link to get to is that important?
Archives.gov/Amending America. America. And you can do it with or without dash.
We have laptops you can grab.
Amending Dash America. Or Amending America.
Okay,
both
great.
work.
I'll mention both.
Yeah, I just mentioned that like we have the conversation coming up, and we have a Twitter chat coming up.
Oh yeah, what is
July 8th. You're going to start running away.
Brian.
I sent him a bunch of emails too.
Oh, yeah?
I did.
We're going to put in our spam blocker.
Part of it is really like that was why I was telling you like when I'm here, I don't hear paying attention, but I'm also just like sitting there.
Oh, yeah, I was looking around and see.
I'm behind the column.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just sit there with my computer.
Yeah, there's
like
2.
Yeah, that's like the NARA table unofficial. Like NARA table, there's like 4 of us that were over there.
Oh, okay. So you got the, well, did you get the website?
I did, and I responded, let's ask Melissa what the press package is, and then we'll add it from there. So, yeah.
Ask what the press package is so that we can send the right stuff to post?
Yes, because if she's technically our press person and is getting paid to do such,
yes.
She should have a press packet.
She should.
Yeah, like she should have a script of what she's sending other organizations.
Right.
And so we can just look at it and then add anything we think needs to be added.
Okay.
But she should, we should not have to reinvent the wheel with this.
Agree.
And so if we can get it from her and just say,
this is one term that we wanted to
just say like, can I get a copy of it?
Oh, okay, and then we can.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay.
And do you want to send an email? Do you want?
You're here, or would you mind doing that since I'll be talking and not able to email in the next half hour, 40 minutes? Okay, that's great. That'd be great.
Also, hello, Dina. Hi.
I have this for you, so you can go back.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's a pointer and everything.
Oh, laser pointer. Sweet. I'm armed and dangerous. I have a laser pointer.
Always. It's your taking a prisoner's attitude. You have to fly off the handle at a moment's notice. That's a joke because he doesn't at all. Sorry for my crazy text messages. I'll work out. You're totally fine. I'm sorry for not being here. And I got there and I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, oh no, I should have been there to be like, everything is fine.
I just need people to like say, it's okay, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna work out. Which is exactly what happened.
Nice.
Thank you for being here.
Was Michael the voice of reason?
No. I mean,
just in general. Yeah.
No, I had a mini panic attack at the when I was going and buying coffee, and I thought like they were glam folks were going to be here doing their glam stuff, not participating in the editathon, but that was not the case. That was just in my head.
So they're like land folks?
Yes.
So everyone has badges.
Yes. Your approach is like, yeah.
Okay, so like tables are.
No, so, well, there, it's both. It's
So like
everybody. There's just that field located.
okay.
Yeah. They might be like,
The other one was.
they're listening.
Is there a good or
So, we're gonna get started in just a couple minutes. So if we want to start making our way, right, has it been 5 minutes? 10 minutes? I don't even
All right, let's get settled. We're gonna get started in a few seconds.
You can just go. It should work. It worked a minute ago. Hang on. Point it at the computer. Oh, come on. It worked. I swear. Let me, hang on. Now it's working. Yeah, try it again. Sarah, do you want to talk about Amending America? Oh, okay, great. Is it now not working? You apparently like have to point. Okay, never mind. This isn't gonna work.
Okay, I'll just say next slide.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Good morning. I think it's still morning. My name is Michael Hussey, and I'm an archivist / education specialist here at the National Archives. And I'm really happy to see you all here today. When this idea was first broached to me, to be honest, I had no idea what an editathon was. I'm still not entirely certain that I do, but I feel like I know a lot more than I did when I came in here this morning. So let me talk a little bit first about some of the larger projects that the Archives is in the midst of. So this editathon, the LGBTQ Editathon, is part of our series on Amending America, how we have changed our nation over the years, not just through constitutional amendments, but through laws, through discussions, through protests, through voting, all sorts of things. And so this is one part of that larger project. And it also happens to be the 225th anniversary year of the Bill of Rights, so we're really focused on issues of rights and justice all this year. Speaking of rights and justice, and that is our hashtag, by the way, hashtag rights and justice. I'll say it again, hashtag rights and justice. For more information on what I was just talking about, you can also go to archives.gov/amendingamerica, archives.gov/amendingamerica. One of the other parts of this Amending America initiative is what we're calling National Conversation on Rights and Justice. And we're having a series of conversations around the country. We've already started in Atlanta. The topic there was dealing with what does civil rights mean today, individual rights. We're moving on to Chicago in July, where we'll be talking about LGBTQ issues of rights and justice. And then we will move on from there to, let me get the order right, to New York. We'll be talking about women's rights and gender equality. Then to Los Angeles, talking about immigration and immigrants' rights. And winding up back in DC for a culminating event. I believe we're also planning a youth summit in Dallas on education and educational access issues. In preparation, or as part of the July 15th event in Chicago on LGBTQ rights and justice, there'll be a July 8th Twitter chat that you can participate in. I'll be on the receiving end of the tweets, along with a few others of us as well. So I hope you can participate in that, and I look forward to it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get something together. I will, okay, we're gonna go back to the slideshow, I'm sorry. Let's just check.
While Dina is figuring that out or
Okay, we're good.
working her
We're good.
magic. Very
Ready next or no?
Not yet.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to say how amazing it is that this event is happening. And I don't mean that a Wikipedia Editathon is happening, but that the whole issue of LGBTQ history as a valid subject of study is happening. May seem like very commonplace to you, but, and I'm not that old, but when I was in college back in the 80s, it was really a brand new discipline. And so there wasn't much scholarly stuff to go by then. So it would have been much more difficult to write or to edit a Wikipedia page in 1983 than it is in 2016. So I just want to, so as an historian, mark that change over time that I've noticed. Next slide, please. I'm the current president of Stonewall at NARA, which is the LGBTQ affinity group here. We've got a number of affinity groups. I'm not going to remember them all, but there's one for women, there's one for Hispanics, there's one for veterans, there's one for African Americans, and I'm drawing a blank on the others. But
disability.
Disability, thank you. Yeah. And so our mission is to do a couple of things. One is to sort of serve as a resource for our fellow employees, for information, for happy hours, although archivists, being an introverted bunch, aren't as happy hour inclined as you might hope. Well, one of our main projects document LGBTQ history by finding primary sources, and I was really happy to hear about wiki sources. I will be visiting that later today. To find sources in our holdings, and I promise you there are thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of relevant material within our 12 to 15 billion document collection. Okay, not all of it is yet in the NARA catalog. So just from hearing earlier today, it's not necessarily verifiable and currently available, but please know that we're hard at work identifying, scanning, providing the correct metadata, and I'm pointing at Pam because you spearhead all of this great work and getting it in there so that it can be then put into wiki sources or drawn into Wikipedia articles as they work. One of our, and can I get the next slide, Dina? One of our sort of corollary projects to that is I've started a Tumblr called Discovering LGBTQ History. And here's the address, lgbtqarchives.tumblr.com.
It is also, for those on the event page, I have cited it as a resource.
Great.
So the link is there as well.
Great. And so this is one of those places where as we get things in the catalog, we're starting to showcase them. So if you're just sort of wondering generally what might be there that I haven't addressed today, go to the Tumblr, take a look, and you'll find some other things. There's some really, really cool stuff in there, as you'll see. Okay, next slide. I want to start off by talking about the Lavender Scare, and I just want to give it a little bit of historical context. I'll try and be as neutral as possible, but just to give it a little historical context in case you're not familiar with it. Lavender Scare is a term I think was coined by historian David Johnson, and I've got his book here for later when you're editing. You can borrow that to parallel sort of the Red Scare, and so this is happening in the late 1940s all the way through the mid 1970s, where there's a concerted effort to identify and discharge gay men and women from the federal civil service. So it's sort of parallel to getting gay men and women out of the armed services, right? It's on these two branches. I'm really proud of myself. I just said that really in a very neutral way because I have to tell you that in going through these records, they're some of the most chilling documents I have ever encountered, and I've encountered very many documents here at the archives. I'm sorry, I just need to be non-neutral for a second. These literally are people being hunted down and their lives ruined. There's just no other way for me to put it. So that's what these documents are. So that's why I was so interested in how you present something neutrally that's so, for me at least, very emotionally laden. So I'm proud of myself that I was able to do that. So
If it makes you feel better, the Wikipedia article in the first sentence uses the word witch hunt.
Okay. I think
not that neutral.
yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe I'll edit that to make it a bit more.
Yeah.
So we have very many records on the Lavender Scare, and some of the ones that have made it into the catalog I wanted to share with you today. Some of them have been put on the Tumblr, some of them have not, but I wanted to share a few of those with you.
I think all of these are also linked on the event page for their correct article, for the articles I've talked about.
I was going to put the catalog ID number, and then I noticed that, and I didn't want to be redundant. And you'd rather just go electronically, I'm sure, to the page. So if you remember your high school or elementary or middle school history, you remember after World War II, communism, the Iron Curtain falls. There's this Cold War between the United States and the West, and the Soviet Union, and the Warsaw Pact. Very quickly, what happens is that the government, the federal government, is trying to determine which of its employees are loyal. And initially that means which employees are not going to sell or give secrets to the Soviet Union. That sort of very quickly blends between 1947 and 1950 into not just being loyal, but being suitable. And the word suitable is just, you could drive 10 Mack trucks through it, right? What is a suitable employee? And what, if anything, does one's personal life, one's sexual life have to do with suitability? And so Congress does what it often does. It formed a committee, or it convened a committee. And this one is the Committee on Expenditures in the Executive Government. A more bland title could not be devised for what actually they were looking at. And just here, this is the first page of 4 large volumes of executive hearings, meaning closed hearings, on the subject of homosexuals in the government service. They've been directed to undertake an investigation of the alleged employment in the government service. Originally, one of the members who was supposed to be on this committee was Senator Joseph McCarthy. So I think that speaks volumes about the connection between the Red Scare and the Lavender Scare here. And so the committee met between July and September of 1950. And this is one page, I would say between the 4 volumes, it's probably 200 or 300 pages worth of hearings. And there are people from the CIA, from the Naval Intelligence Service. I was hoping to be someone from the National Archives, but I think at that point we were under the thumb of the General Services Administration. A lot of agencies gave testimony to the committee. The committee also heard from local police departments, and by which I mean the DC Police Department, the Vice Squad in DC. Lieutenant Blick. It's one of those names, like if you heard it in a movie, you wouldn't believe it, but it's his name. And talks about some of the bureaucratic means by which people were identified. So if you were arrested, you were fingerprinted. The fingerprints were sent to the FBI, which sent them to the Civil Service Commission, which sent them to your agency. So it's this very complex, complicated, and sadly thorough means of investigating this. I won't say more about this document except it's on our catalog. It's fascinating reading. It's not a happy story. It's an important story, and it's now available through our website, which I'm very, very grateful for. You'll notice up at the top, the word confidential is slashed out. For years, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Alan Baraby's book coming out, Under Fire, about being gay or lesbian in World War II and immediately after. He tried to get access to these executive hearing transcripts and was blocked, even though they had passed the Senate's 25-year rule, I believe. If I have a legislative archivist around, they can correct me. And other scholars were not able to get access to these. These are now accessible and have been accessible in our research rooms, and now through the wonders of the interweb, they are available electronically. Okay, next slide. Okay. I don't know if there's a Wikipedia page on Executive Order 10450, but if there's not, please start one. And if there is, please add to it with this document.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt if you don't mind. There is a page. It is there. It's on the list to expand and improve for today's event.
Okay. You have your mission, should you choose. So this is Executive Order 10450, and its title, official title is Security Requirements for Government Employment. Again, the government is really good at providing fairly innocuous titles for documents that have incredible repercussions, some intended, some unintended consequences. And so if we go to the very next slide here, 9-page document, that red box, put a red pen around the original. This is just a digital red box for your viewing ease. You'll notice that under, I believe it's section 4, subpart 3, something like that. Remember back to suitability. Are you suitable to be a federal employee? Here's one of the categories under which investigations would be launched and dismissal could be effective. And it says any criminal, infamous, dishonest, immoral, or notoriously disgraceful conduct, habitual use of intoxicants to excess, drug addiction, or sexual perversion. So, you know, it's quite a rogues gallery that have been all lumped together there. And it's that last phrase, sexual perversion, which doesn't necessarily limit it to homosexuality, but in effect, that's what it did. So this is the clause here that puts teeth into the lavender scare. It's not just people being scared, which is why I'm battling around in my head for a different term for it. It's people being identified and negatively impacted because of that identification. Persecuted. I see again trying to be neutral here, but persecuted seems like the right word. Yeah.
Is purge a good word?
I think purge is a very good word. That's what I've been trying to think of. Yeah, that's what I've been playing around with. Because I think people at the time who will refer this, I'll say, yes, we are trying to purge this like a poison out of our system. I would say we're trying to purge probably some of the, you know, well-qualified, innocent people out of the system, but that's not neutral. So anyway, so that's the clause that does that. Let me just jump back. You don't need to move the slide, but the fact that I'm standing here today and that there's an affinity group here on LGBTQ issues would not have been possible in 1953 when this was signed, probably before. I would have gotten a call from HR or the FBI. I would have been called down for interrogation, literally. And I would have been asked all sorts of questions about who I am and who I date and whatever. And I would probably either be given the opportunity to turn in my dismissal or I would have been fired. Boom, 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 within a week, out. So I just want to, again, give you that historical context for it all. So that's 1953. It's not until 1975 that the Civil Service Commission overturns this. Okay. So maybe another page that you want to update or edit would be Civil Service Commission policies on employment. I'm not sure how it would be phrased. And it's only in the last 3 years that we've had this group, and I don't mean to be on a soapbox here at all, but it's only 3 years that we're, yeah, more soapbox? It's only 3 years that we've had this group, and my guess is, and I've been at the archives for 22 years, my guess is that even 10 years ago, I could have formed this group, but I probably would have been a group of 2, maybe 3, and we've got about 80 or 90 members. Well, yeah, and being archivists, they don't always show up to events, but they're there, and they're lurking, and they're reading, and so I embrace them as members. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that is really hard about doing LGBTQ history is it gets really depressing when you're talking about the federal government's policies towards LGBTQ people, right? So I'm always looking for, if not happy endings, I'm looking for positive stories. And this is one of those positive stories. I don't know if you know Frank Camden, Franklin Edward Camden. If you don't, you need to know about this man. He's phenomenally important in the gay rights movement, or the homophile movement, as he would have put it back in the early 1960s. I think you just can't understand, particularly the federal government's policies, unless you know about this man. He was an astronomer, served in World War II. He had a PhD in astronomy from, correct me if I'm wrong, and I love this group because you will now do the research and correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that he went to Harvard, has a PhD in astronomy, got a job after the war in the Army Mapping Service. A dream job of his. He got to be an astronomer, right? This is what he wanted to do all his life. He got called in, maybe 6 or 9 months after he was hired, and was told to explain himself because he was facing dismissal because he was gay, essentially. It's a more complex story, and you can read all about it in his Supreme Court case, which is up on our catalog, even as we speak. So he's dismissed as he's gay, and this is 1957, right? I just want you to kind of think back. I can't remember 57, it's a little before my time. But he decided after a couple months, of soul searching and a bit of depression, as you might imagine, to fight back. So he took his case to the district court, to the appeals court, and finally he appealed for a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court of the United States, basically asking the Supreme Court to hear his case. As you might not be surprised, the Supreme Court opted not to hear his case, and he did not get reinstated as a federal employee. He did get either an apology or some sort of commendation from President Obama, maybe in 2010. I believe he died in 2011. I want to read, next slide, please. So again, this is from the court case, Camden v. Bruckner. Bruckner was the Secretary of the Army, and it's on our catalog, and the numbers are in the material that Dina provided.
It's on the to-do list.
Again, this is not me breaking all archival rules, just for your, to make it a little bit easier. I met Frank once. I actually interviewed him back when I was a graduate student, and if you talk to anyone who knew him, or if you hear him, he had a really distinctive, loud voice. Like his stage whisper would carry for about half a mile, right? Very strong, assertive, some would say acerbic individual, but someone who really got things done. They often go together. And so I just want to read you this in case you're having trouble seeing it from the side, just to kind of give you a sense of who he was and the kind of pushback that he was trying to affect. He says, but what is immoral conduct, or like what is an unsuitable employee in terms of immorality? He says the petitioner asserts flatly, unequivocally, and absolutely, uncompromisingly, that homosexuality, whether by mere inclination or by overt act, is not only immoral, but that for those choosing voluntarily to engage in homosexual acts, such acts are moral in a real and positive sense, and are good, right, and desirable socially and personally. The regulation against gay employees, as it stands, does not say petitioner may to this assertion. In fact, upon examination, the regulation will be seen to say nothing at all. I'm not doing his voice justice there at all, but this is some of that pushback. And if you're going to be editing or creating a page for Frank Kameny, getting a sense of the force of his personality, the force of his intellect is really going to be important. And I think this is where, and I think the secondary literature would back up me on this. The primary source is reading his own words will definitely get you to that point, along with secondary sources. Okay, need to take a breather after channeling Frank Kameny there for a moment.
Really quickly, one quick quote from the Wikipedia article.
Yeah.
Throughout his life, he consistently cited his race as human.
Yeah. Just one other quote of his, and I when he said it to me, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I think it's a quote he used pretty regularly, but he says, something along the lines of, I give the world a chance to prove me wrong. I listen, and if I decide that they're incorrect, they're incorrect. So here's someone with a very strong sense of self. As you we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Another story that doesn't end happily, but has some very positive moments to it. Up on our website now is a letter from Harvey Milk to President Carter in 1978. If you've seen the movie Milk with Sean Penn, you'll remember that scene from, what do they call it back then? Gay Freedom Day in San Francisco. This is before more letters were added to the acronym. Gay Freedom Day in San Francisco, and I was like, I'm Harvey Milk and I'm here to recruit you. If you've seen the movie, that should jump out at you. And so he sent a copy of this speech and this letter to President Carter, asking President Carter to basically be a little bit more involved in the struggle for justice and civil rights for gay and lesbian people. He says it a little bit more forcefully than that, but basically get in the fight. And specifically, there was a ballot proposition in California, which is commonly referred to as the Briggs Amendment, which would have banned LGBT people from teaching or working in public schools in the state of California. Another page to be created or edited. The file actually includes a copy of the petition. It's, talk about fine print, it's like really very hard to read, but it's there. So he asked for President Carter's support on this in opposition to this ballot amendment, proposed ballot amendment. Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford had already come out against it. So there was bipartisan opposition to it for various reasons, but certainly for both. Pam, I'm a little nervous to say this with you in the room, but I will because I'm being brave. No. This document, as in a digital form, is not currently in the catalog, but it hasn't been attached to the description. So the description is there, but the image is not. And that's, maybe we can talk. Yeah, I think it's more of a, well, we'll talk later. Yeah, it's more of an in-house kind of baseball kind of thing. Okay, next slide. Marriage. You may have heard about marriage in the last year or two. Same-sex marriage equality. I want to tell you the story, and I don't, again, I should have done my research and figured out which one of these did have pages and which ones didn't. But this is the story told by a case called Baker v. Nelson. It's another U.S. Supreme Court case, so it's in the holdings of the National Archives. And it's Richard John Baker and James Michael McConnell went to the Hennepin County Courthouse to apply for marriage in 1970. They filled out an application. Actually, can you switch to the next slide and then we'll go back to this one? This is them here, and you can see their marriage application here. This is a photo from the Minnesota Historical Society that they gave me permission to use for this presentation. And then we can hop back. So they filled out this marriage application. The clerk said, well, I'm not going to say no, but I'm going to send it to my boss to decide. So kind of passing the buck a little bit. They ultimately decided against them. The district court in Hennepin County ruled against them. The Minnesota Supreme Court ruled against them. They took it to the US Supreme Court, which ruled against them. However, the Obergefell case from last summer specifically overruled this case, so it overturned the ruling in this case. I contacted, goes by Michael McConnell, and to tell him that we were going to be using this on our Tumblr, and he sent me this email, which I just will always cherish. He says that we have not seen that application since we turned it in. Right? They didn't get a copy. It was just, in it goes. Yeah, exactly. Where was their iPhone in 1970? They didn't, so they had never seen it. So I immediately sent him a scan of this. He was thrilled. He and his husband were thrilled. They're still together 40 years later. Yeah, see, a happy ending. I found one, right? So they're still together 40 years later. And not only had they not seen this application, but they hadn't received a copy of all of the pleadings and briefs and all that stuff that goes into filing a case in the Supreme Court or any court, because the ACLU of Minnesota had filed all that, and I guess those papers were still in the custody of the ACLU. So they were thrilled to be able to go through basically the story of their Supreme Court fight through the website of the National Archives catalog. And they have written a book, a memoir, called The Marriage Heard Around the World. I don't know if that's considered a secondary source, a memoir, but in any event, they'll be going on a book tour. They are going on a book tour, and they're likely to be here at the National Archives in October to speak about their life in marriage, activism, but other aspects of their lives as well. Yeah, that was a good day at work. Not so happy story. This is DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act. Every law that's passed by the Congress and signed by the President comes to the National Archives, going back to 1790 to not quite the current day, but we get them pretty rapidly. So you can see this is the Defense of Marriage Act, signed by Newt Gingrich for the House, Strom Thurmond for the Senate, and Bill Clinton as president, approved September 21st, 1996. So again, just if you're updating or editing or want to add some documents to help illustrate a page on the fight for marriage equality, I think this document should be included in there somewhere because it's sort of pivotal. It is. Next slide.
Oh, was that? Okay. There was
You're good.
Okay.
You're right, because I did a little animation there and I forgot about it. Okay, I want to sort of pivot a little bit and from the federal government and talk about a case which historians are still debating. And this is that's why, in some ways, why I asked that question. This is the story of well, it depends which position you take, what name you use. Lucy Slater or Joseph Lobdell. An individual was born named Lucy Slater. Very early on in this person's life, they wore men's clothing, went hunting, did all of these things that sort of stereotypically and certainly in the 1830s would have been very closely associated with men and men only. She does get married to a man as Lucy. She marries William Slater, who goes off to fight in the Civil War. He dies after the war, I believe. And so she files a widow's pension, which is why we have a record here at the National Archives, because it's a federal pension. And I won't tell her whole story, but there are two historians who have written books. One is A Strange Sort of Being, in quotes, The Transgender Life of Lucienne / Joseph Israel. He went by Joseph Lobdell, Joseph Israel. And The Rebellion of Miss Lucienne Lobdell. Two different authors with very different opinions. William Claver believes that this was a passing woman, a woman who donned men's clothing in order to get some of the privileges that came with being male in the 19th century, like being able to vote, job opportunities, so on and so forth. A distant cousin of Lucy Slater / Joseph Lobdell, Joseph Israel, Bambi Lobdell, takes a totally different point of view. She believes that this individual was a transgender man. And this raises all sorts of issues, right? And I'm not going to even try to figure this out. I'm going to leave that on your plate. What terms do we use to describe someone who lived before the terms like transgender or gender identity or even homosexual were available to anyone's thought process, right? If you had asked Lucy or Joseph, are you transgender by any chance? They would have no clue as to what you're saying, right? You might as well have told them that, oh, yeah, and we put a man on the moon. I mean, it would have been that unknown to them. And so the primary sources here don't answer any questions, don't resolve this debate, but it's a really interesting debate. And Lucy or Joseph led a very interesting life. And if there's not a page, again, good one to start, good one to edit. But just know that there is this debate amongst scholars as to whether or not this was a passing woman. And we have all sorts of records of women who passed as men to serve in the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, for that matter, or whether this was truly a transgender man who that's just what he was. And then the question is, can we use that term? My dissertation's waiting to be written about it. I've done mine, so I'm not doing it. I just want to point out one line here. And I'm going to just put my cards on the table. I actually think whatever term would have made sense to Joseph, I actually think he was a transgender man. I wouldn't use that term. He wouldn't use that term, but that's from my 21st century perspective. He seems more like Joseph than Lucy to me. He was put in an insane asylum by his brother, Willard. The Willard Asylum for the Insane in Willard, New York, Seneca Lake, in 1881. And this is a report from the staff of that asylum back to the Pension Bureau here in Washington, letting them know what sort of condition they would have said Lucy was in, because, you know, if the pension was being adjudicated for some reason that maybe too much was being given, or maybe a pension shouldn't have been given to this person, was she able to testify or give testimony? So the asylum writes back that her mind is quite weak and she's not competent to testify. And this is the line that jumped out at me. Just at present, she is in one of her excited conditions and calls herself Joseph or Joe. When she is quiet, she gives her right name. So I'll just tell you, my thought here is it would be very odd for a passing woman who had been put in an insane asylum to continue that passing behavior under those circumstances. There's no benefit here. And that's the point that Bambi Lobdell makes in her book. Obviously, we're not going to figure it out here today, and your job as Wikipedians is not to figure out the issue either. But it's a really interesting story, and the more data and the more documents like this, I think the users of Wikipedia will benefit from that grade. Okay, I think that's the end of my spiel. I could go on. How long have I gone on? I can go on for about 10 more minutes, I think I have scheduled. But there are tons more that I could have brought up to you today. There's hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of court martials, both Navy, from every branch of the armed services, going back to the Revolution, well, I don't know about, not to the current day, but well into the 20th century. And so we have those. We have many, many more congressional documents.
Sorry, I'm gonna pull up here. Oops.
That's okay. I just have to. There are some photographs that I really want to get scanned. I didn't expect to find them, but I found some photographs. So there's a lot more here, a lot more coming. So coming attractions, basically, is what I could talk about. But for your purposes here today, I wanted to focus on what's already in our catalog, because that then is what's available to you and verifiable and vetted, I guess, for lack of a better word. Yes?
I have a question about your research process. Do you think it's made a little bit more difficult because not necessarily on every form did someone declare their sexuality? Like,
yes.
Since it would get you fired, there are probably a lot more LGBTQ records that we have.
Right.
Similar to women that would submit patent applications using initial instead of their full name.
Right. Yeah.
So do you find that kind of challenging?
It is definitely, it's definitely challenging, and it gets easier, ironically, as the government gets more punitive, because then the federal government starts keeping track of, say, immigrants coming into the country who have been accused of moral turpitude, which can mean anything from prostitution to bigamy to being gay or lesbian or transgender or bisexual. Say again?
Or polygamous.
Or polygamists or anarchists. These, all these, if you see the immigration forms from the early 20th century, you'll know all these terms. So yeah, it does make it more challenging for sure, especially going back to the 19th century. I mean, there just wasn't a term that was used, so it does take digging, which is why I really relied on these two historians to, you know, they said, married a Civil War veteran, and my mind immediately went to our pension records. And luckily, her husband applied for pension, and she applied for the widow's pension, and then we have this. So yeah, it is definitely challenging, and I don't expect that we'll ever uncover all of it. But you know, I like to research, so I'm going to keep trying. Are there other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah. It depends what time period. Well, his personnel record is, assuming it survived the fire at our St. Louis Military Personnel Records Center in '73, would be there. If he was court-martialed, he was just discharged for the good of the service or something like that, administrative discharge. Yeah, so that's where I would start first. And so if you go to our webpage, archives.gov, there's a tab for veterans records, and if you follow that through, if that gets too Byzantine, and it can, whatever you need to know figuring it out, please feel free to contact me, and I'll point you towards someone who knows these records really well. Absolutely, absolutely. Other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
appreciate your attention, and I really do appreciate your work. This is great stuff, and now I know what an editathon is. It's been a win-win day. Thank you very much.
So I think we're, so again, thank you, Michael, very, very much for this. It was really interesting. Thank you, Andrew, for your session on how to edit. I think lunch is front of the room. So thank you again, Wikimedia DC, for very generously providing breakfast and lunch. Articles are on the page. I think we can get started. So
There's an
thank you.
Etherpad that we created as well. So
There's a what?
Etherpad link on the page for the editathon.
Thank you. I can do that. And Michael has also loaned some books. They're going to stay here. We're all going to try our own, but he has lent them to us for the editing. So what am I pulling up? I'm sorry.
You want to put up the name?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure you want to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Here. Hi, everybody who was chatting or who was viewing with us online. This is Dina. I'm the Innovation Hub Coordinator. I apologize. I heard advancing during Michael's presentation. I'm going to try to put that on our Wikipedia event page. I'm going to talk to Michael about that in just a minute. I'm going to formally end the Google Hangout. Please do continue joining us for editing on our Editathon homepage, which I am also going to chat out before I log off in just a minute. You can chat with us during the event. So thank you again for joining us for the presentation part of the Editathon, and hope that maybe next time you can join in person, or we'll do this again. Thanks so much. If you have questions, we're at Innovation Hub, all one word, at NARA.gov. Thanks.